Make sure you're not alone right now. Check behind you. Lock your doors. What I'm about to tell you isn't some campfire tale designed to give you a quick thrill. This is real. Every word of it happened to me and my two best friends in October of 2019, and it changed us forever. My name is Alex, and back then I was 24 years old, working a dead-end job and looking for something, anything, to break the monotony of my life. My friends Marcus and Tyler were in the same boat. We'd grown up together, shared everything from scraped knees to broken hearts, but we'd never shared anything like what happened that night in Savannah, Georgia. It was Friday, October 25th, and we'd driven down from Atlanta for what we thought would be the perfect Halloween weekend. Savannah's got this reputation, Spanish moss hanging like ghostly curtains, cobblestone streets that echo with footsteps from centuries past, and more haunted locations per square mile than anywhere else in America. We wanted an authentic paranormal experience, something real, something that would give us a story worth telling. That's how we ended up standing outside the wrought iron gates of Bonaventure Cemetery at 11:47 that night, armed with EMF meters, a spirit box, and the kind of confidence that only comes from being young and stupid. The cemetery sprawls across 160 acres of Spanish moss, draped oaks, and weathered headstones, some dating back to the 1840s. It officially closes at 5 p.m., but we figured a little trespassing was worth it for the experience we were after. Looking back now, we should have taken the locked gates as a sign to stay out. We should have noticed how the usual sounds of the city seemed to fade away as we approached the fence. We should have paid attention to the way our phones kept losing signal even though we were in the middle of Savannah. But we didn't. We were too excited, too eager to prove to ourselves that we weren't afraid of some old cemetery. Tyler found a section where the fence had been damaged, probably by a fallen branch during the last hurricane. We squeezed through, one by one, our equipment bags catching on the twisted metal. The temperature outside had been a mild 68 degrees, typical for late October in Georgia. But the moment I stepped onto the cemetery grounds, everything changed. The temperature dropped. I'm not exaggerating here. It felt like stepping into a walk-in freezer. My breath came out in visible puffs, and I could see Marcus and Tyler experiencing the same thing. We checked our phones thinking maybe a cold front had moved in, but the weather app still showed 68 degrees. That should have been our first warning. The fog started rolling in almost immediately, thick and unnatural, clinging to the ground like it had a purpose. Our flashlights barely penetrated it, creating these eerie halos of light that seemed to make the darkness beyond even more impenetrable. The Spanish moss hanging from the ancient oaks looked like ghostly fingers reaching down to grab us, and every shadow seemed to move when we weren't looking directly at it. We made our way deeper into the cemetery, following the main path past elaborate Victorian monuments and simple granite markers. The EMF meter in Tyler's hand started clicking occasionally. Nothing dramatic, just enough to keep us on edge. Marcus had the spirit box, that device that supposedly allows spirits to communicate by manipulating radio frequencies. So far it was just producing static, but we kept it running anyway.
About 20 minutes in, we found ourselves standing in front of an impressive mausoleum with the name Morrison carved into the stone above the entrance. The structure was old, probably from the mid-1800s, with intricate stonework that had weathered decades of Georgia humidity and storms. Something about it drew us in. Maybe the way the fog seemed to swirl around it differently, or how our EMF meters started going crazy the closer we got. Tyler held up his device and the readings spiked into the red zone. That's when Marcus decided to try direct communication with the spirit box. He cleared his throat and spoke into the device, his voice barely above a whisper in the thick silence. "Is anyone here with us tonight? Can you tell us your name?" For a moment, nothing but static. Then, clear as day, a single word came through the speaker. "Leave." We all froze. The voice was distinctly female, older, with a southern accent that seemed to carry the weight of decades. Marcus tried again, his hands shaking slightly as he held the device. "We're not here to cause trouble. We just want to understand." This time, the response was immediate and urgent. "Now!" Before any of us could react, a loud bang erupted from inside the mausoleum, like someone had slammed a heavy door or knocked over a stone coffin. The sound echoed through the cemetery, and in the silence that followed, we could hear our own hearts pounding. That's when we should have left. That's when we should have run back to the fence and never looked back. But fear has this weird way of paralyzing you, and curiosity has an even weirder way of overriding common sense. Instead of leaving, we pressed deeper into the cemetery. The fog grew thicker as we moved away from the main path, following a narrow trail that wound between older sections of graves. Our flashlights seemed less effective here, the beams swallowed by the mist after just a few feet. The EMF readings were off the charts now, and the spirit box had gone completely silent, not even static. That's when we saw the light. It started as just a faint blue glow in the distance, hovering about 6 feet off the ground between two large oak trees. At first, we thought it might be another group of ghost hunters, maybe someone with a different kind of flashlight. But as we got closer, it became clear that this wasn't any kind of artificial light we'd ever seen. The blue globe pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, and it seemed to be moving slowly through the trees. We followed it, drawn by a curiosity that felt almost compulsive. The light led us deeper into the cemetery, past sections we hadn't explored, past graves so old the inscriptions had been worn away by time and weather. Then we heard the footsteps, not one set, but multiple sets walking in a slow, deliberate circle around us. The sound was unmistakable, the crunch of dead leaves and the soft thud of feet on packed earth. But when we spun up flashlights around, there was nothing there. Just fog and shadows, and the feeling that we were being watched by dozens of unseen eyes. The footsteps continued, getting closer with each circuit. Tyler grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to leave bruises. Marcus had gone completely pale, the spirit box shaking in his hands. That's when we heard the voice again. But this time, it wasn't coming through the device. A woman's voice, soft and sad, came from directly behind me. "Help me." I spun around so fast I nearly fell over, but there was nothing there. Just fog and darkness, and the overwhelming sense that something was terribly wrong. The blue light had disappeared, and our phones had completely lost signal. When Tyler tried to use his GPS to navigate back to the entrance, the app showed us as being in the middle of the Savannah River. We were lost. For the next hour, we wandered through the fog, trying to find our way back to the main path. Every direction looked the same. Every trail seemed to lead us in circles. The temperature kept dropping, and we could hear faint singing in the distance, a lullaby that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. That's when we saw her. She was standing about 20 feet away, perfectly visible despite the thick fog that had been obscuring everything else. A woman in a white dress that looked like it belonged to the 1800s, with long, dark hair that hung loose around her shoulders. She looked solid, real, like she could have been any living person out for a late-night walk, except for her eyes. Her eyes were completely black. No whites, no iris, just black voids that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. She was looking directly at us, and when she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the fog. "Help me! They won't let me leave!" Marcus dropped the spirit box, and it hit the ground with a crack that seemed to echo forever. Tyler was backing away slowly, but I found myself frozen in place, unable to look away from those terrible black eyes. The woman raised her arm and pointed behind us. That's when we turned around and saw them. 7 figures stood in a line about 10 feet away, all dressed in old-fashioned clothing from different eras, men and women, young and old, but all sharing the same black void eyes as the woman in white. They didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, watching us with those horrible empty sockets. The silence, was somehow worse than the noise had been. No footsteps, no singing, no static from the broken spirit box, just the sound of our own panicked breathing and the feeling that we were surrounded by something ancient and malevolent. That's when Tyler screamed, "Run! Run right now!" We ran like our lives depended on it, crashing through the fog without any sense of direction. Branches tore at our clothes, headstones appeared out of nowhere to trip us, and behind us we could hear something following. Not footsteps this time, but a sound like wind rushing through dead leaves, getting closer and closer. I don't know how long we ran or how we found our way back to the fence. One moment we were stumbling through the fog in blind terror, and the next we were standing at the damaged section where we'd entered, gasping for breath and shaking uncontrollably. It was like we'd crossed some invisible threshold, and suddenly we were back in the normal world. The fog was gone. The temperature had returned to a normal 68 degrees. Our phones had full signal again. But our ghost hunting equipment was completely dead, drained of power despite having fresh batteries when we entered. We didn't speak during the drive back to our hotel. We didn't speak the next morning over breakfast. It wasn't until we were safely back in Atlanta that any of us could bring ourselves to talk about what had happened. That's when Marcus remembered his camera.
He'd been taking pictures throughout the night, documenting our investigation. Most of the photos were just darkness and fog, but 3 of them made our blood run cold. In the first, taken near the Morrison Mausoleum, you could clearly see a figure standing behind a tree that none of us had noticed at the time. In the second, dozens of orbs filled the frame, glowing spheres that definitely hadn't been visible to the naked eye. But it was the third photo that confirmed our worst fears. It showed the woman in white and all 7 figures, standing exactly where we'd seen them. But in the photograph, you could see details that had been hidden in the fog. The woman's dress was torn and stained. Her hair was matted with what looked like grave dirt, and those black eyes seemed to stare directly out of the photograph with an intelligence that was both ancient and malevolent. We did research after that, trying to understand what we'd encountered. The Morrison Mausoleum belongs to the family of Sarah Morrison, who died in 1867 at the age of 20 from scarlet fever. According to local legends, her spirit has been seen in Bonaventure Cemetery dozens of times over the past 150 years, always asking for help, always unable to leave. But we never found any information about the 7 figures. No records, no legends, no explanations for who they were or why they were there. That might be the most terrifying part of all, the idea that there are things in that cemetery that are so old, so forgotten, that even the ghost stories don't remember them. The nightmare started about a week later. All 3 of us began having the same dream, standing in that fog while those black eyes watched us from the darkness. Tyler moved to California 6 months later, said he couldn't handle being in Georgia anymore. Marcus started going to therapy, but he's never been quite the same. As for me, I'm telling you this story as a warning. Some places are closed to the public after dark for a reason. Some boundaries aren't meant to be crossed, and some mysteries are better left unsolved. If you ever find yourself in Savannah, if you ever feel the urge to explore Bonaventure Cemetery after hours, remember what happened to us. Remember that some spirits don't want to be saved. They want company. And once they have your attention, once they've looked into your eyes with those black voids, they never really let you go. I still check behind me when I walk alone at night. I still lock my doors even in broad daylight, because I know now that there are things in this world that exist in the spaces between life and death, and they're always watching, always waiting for someone foolish enough to cross over into their domain. Make sure you're not alone right now. Check behind you. Lock your doors. And whatever you do, stay away from Bonaventure Cemetery
After Dark.